come to order? Okay. Today's hearing will come to order. Pursuant to Committee Rule 4B3, members of the House Armed Services Committee who are not members of the subcommittee are allowed to participate in today's hearing and will be recognized after all subcommittee members have had an opportunity to ask questions. Good afternoon and welcome to the Strategic Forces Subcommittee's hearing on missile defense and defeat programs of the Department of Defense. Testifying before the subcommittee today, we have Ms. Andrea Yaffe, who is currently performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. We have General Gregory Guillot, Commander of U.S. North Command and Northern American Aerospace Defense Command, Lieutenant General Heath Collins, Director of Missile Defense Agency, and Lieutenant General Sean Gainey, Commander, U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command and Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense. Thank you to our witnesses for being with us today. We recognize the FY26 budget is still being finalized, and this limits our ability to discuss funding levels for the upcoming fiscal year. However, we look forward to hearing from you on the policies, programs, and priorities for the Department of Missile Defense and missile defeat activities. Your testimony today will help set the stage for our review of the President's budget when it is submitted. We also look forward to hearing an update from our witnesses on the Department's work to develop the Golden Dome for America's architecture. Today's hearing comes as an important moment for missile defense. Despite the growth and increasing complexity of missile threats in recent years and the value of missile defense capabilities being demonstrated in the skies over Israel, the Red Sea, and Ukraine, budget requests for missile defense funding in recent years have declined. Last year's budget in particular prematurely eliminated competition in two key missile defense programs, the Glide Phase Interceptor and Next Generation Interceptor, and also proposed to terminate procurement of the Navy's SM-3 Block IB interceptor. Each of these decisions added risk and sacrificed capability for the sake of reducing funding on missile defense. Now a new administration has taken office with a new vision for investment in missile defense capabilities and defending the homeland that is long overdue. Missile threats to the homeland are growing and becoming more dynamic as our adversaries develop and deploy new capabilities such as hypersonic weapons, long-range cruise missiles, new ballistic missiles, and even fractional orbital bombardment system, or FOBs. These capabilities enable our adversaries to strike the United States and coerce U.S. leadership in the event of crisis, and our ability to defend against them has not kept pace. Sustained underinvestment and outdated policy limitations have left our homeland vulnerable. In its 2023 report, the Bipartisan Congressional Commission on Strategic Posture of the United States, led by Madeleine Creedon and former Secretary John Kyle, noted our homeland's vulnerability, stating, Russia and China are deploying missile defense systems designed to protect critical assets against U.S. offensive strikes. To date, the United States has chosen not to build homeland missile defenses against major powers. U.S. homeland integrated air and missile defense capabilities do not adequately protect the critical infrastructure necessary to project power and avoid coercion in light of growing Russian and Chinese nuclear conventional strike threats. The Commission went on to recommend the deployment of a comprehensive integrated air and missile defense system capable of deterring and defeating coercive attacks from Russia and China, as well as rogue states. And it argued doing so would strengthen deterrence and reinforce strategic stability by complicating adversary planning and reducing incentives to conduct coercive attacks. While I expect we will see significant partisan debate about the Golden Dome, it's important to remember the common sense bipartisan elements at the core of the President's vision, and I look forward to seeing the Department's plan for carrying it out. I now recognize the ranking member, my friend Mr. Moulton, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Desjardins, and thank you again to all our witnesses for your testimony today. This is esoteric but unbelievably important work, and we appreciate your dedication to our nation's strategic defense. As I have said repeatedly, missile defense has a mixed legacy, but let's start with the vast areas where my colleagues and I and most experts agree. And I'm fortunate, because this is so esoteric, to be accompanied this afternoon by this nifty chart I developed. We have pursued robust investments in sensing and tracking, the foundational basis of missile defense, including the Golden Dome idea, and we are doing more. That's level one. We have also matured regional missile defense capabilities that are truly miracles of engineering, Patriot, Aegis, THAAD, that have real battlefield benefit today to our allies and partners under attack. Level 2. We have sought to defend fully against the strategic threat posed by rogue nations, such as North Korea, who may not be deterred by mutually assured destruction. That's level 4. But, and I'm skipping over level 3 very quickly, but that's because it's essentially similar to level 4, which is if one of these nations or a Russia or China simply has an accidental launch. In either case, we're talking about a small number of missiles that can be defeated by existing missile defense systems and missile defense systems that have been developed since Bush pulled out of the ABM treaty. However, we have relied on our nuclear deterrent, or the concept of mutually assured destruction, when it comes to the huge complex threats posed by Russian and Chinese ICBMs, hypersonics, and other systems that are specifically designed to evade our missile defense. That is level 5. So as the chairman correctly pointed out, there are a lot of areas of bipartisan agreement here. And the question is, what do we do about level 5? Because that's what the president is proposing changing. Now, as stated in the 2019 Missile Defense Review, authored by the first Trump administration, and I quote, "The United States relies on nuclear deterrence to address the large and more sophisticated Russian and Chinese intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities, as well as to deter attacks from any source consistent with long-standing U.S. declaratory policy." To be clear, Golden Dome completely upends this policy, which is credited with keeping us safe from nuclear attack for the last 70 years. Do we believe that the fundamentals of the strategic landscape in the past 6 years have shifted so dramatically that we require a monumental shift in our strategic defense policy, a shift from every prior Democratic and Republican administration, including the first Trump administration? If so, I'm more than happy to hear why and entertain that debate. But so far, we have not heard why. We have not heard any rationale. We have not heard any plan. And here's why this could be dangerous. The goal of missile defense, of course, is to keep us safe, but paradoxically, more missile defense is not necessarily better if it upsets strategic stability, the equilibrium that deters any nation from launching a nuclear attack that could explode into a nuclear war. Most people don't know how close we have come to nuclear war by accident in the last 70 years, but we've had at least 13 close calls, like the time when the Soviet systems detected a massive U.S. attack and a lowly Russian major only averted a nuclear holocaust by suspecting it was a false indication and deliberately disobeying a standard order to launch a retaliatory attack. Part of why he relied on his intuition in that instance is knowing that his own people, his own family, would be obliterated if he got that wrong. That is why mutually assured destruction, an assuredly frightening concept, actually promotes stability. If nations know that they will themselves get obliterated if they use nuclear weapons, they are unlikely to use nuclear weapons. The potentially devastating problem with Golden Dome is that it upends this strategic stability, and if Russia or China believes instead that the United States is not so vulnerable to a retaliatory strike, it makes them less likely to think twice about acting quickly, acting first, or using novel delivery methods that get around our defenses, including Golden Dome itself, before we do anything to them. And that is why, even though Golden Dome sounds good, and it could actually make us less safe, I fear that some of my colleagues who tout their fiscal responsibility want to spend billions of taxpayer dollars without a plan, and worse, on something that could actually make those very taxpayers less safe and our nation less secure. That's neither fiscal nor strategic responsibility. Sadly, as with most complex national security issues, the president understands neither the history nor the implications of these plans. He just wants to one-up one of his friends with a gold-plated version of something they have. So as we continue to evaluate DoD missile defense programs, I will ask these questions. How will expanding U.S. missile defense today impact our strategic stability tomorrow? Does it raise the incentive for our adversaries to strike first? We are already in an arms race. Will this accelerate it? Do these choices make our nation and our world more or less safe? These are the questions we must ask ourselves on this subcommittee, not just with an eye to this year's budget and the NDAA, but with a view towards how our decisions will impact the world we leave for our children. Let me be clear once again. It is the job of this committee to have this debate, to investigate whether something has changed with technology or our adversaries or otherwise, and provide the oversight that we are constitutionally required to provide. What is not our job is to fund a fantasy, especially a dangerous one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the ranking member for his comments and would agree that this is a good subject for debate today. You speak that 6 to 8 years ago, how things have radically changed or not changed, and as we know, fielding these defenses takes time, and you got to be also looking into the future. So I think those are fair questions, and we'll get through those today. We'll now move to the opening statements from our witnesses. I would note that your prepared statements will be made part of the record, but you will each have 5 minutes to make opening remarks. Ms. Yaffe, let's begin with you, and after you, I'll recognize General Guillot, General Collins, and General Gainey. You're now recognized.
Thank you. Excuse me. Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify on the Department of Defense's missile defense and defeat posture. I am grateful to appear alongside my distinguished colleagues. Missile defenses are a vital element of our strategic force posture, both as a means of deterrence as well as defending the U.S. homeland and our security interests abroad. As we see nearly every day in conflicts worldwide, offensive missile capabilities are becoming a central feature of modern warfare. China, North Korea, Russia, and Iran now deploy advanced missile systems to coerce and intimidate opponents, inflict tactical damage, or to carry out strategic campaigns. Our adversaries are investing in the next generation of offensive capabilities to hold the United States homeland at risk, coerce our allies and partners, and threaten our deployed forces. China, Russia, and North Korea are fielding more advanced missiles with greater ranges and in larger numbers to provide the means for strategic level attack against the homeland, including nuclear and conventional options. These adversaries are rapidly modernizing, expanding, and diversifying their missile forces, incorporating technological advances into warheads, delivery systems of all types, and supporting command and control systems. Iran, meanwhile, has the capability to strike targets throughout the Middle East and continues to arm its proxies in the region. The President's Golden Dome for America executive order underscores this point. The threat of attack by ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missiles and other advanced aerial attacks remain the most catastrophic threat facing the United States. To counter these growing threats, we need next-generation missile defense and missile defeat architectures that can complement our existing nuclear and conventional offensive capabilities. The President has directed that the United States will develop and field a next-generation missile defense shield to provide for the common defense of our citizens and the nation, and deter, defend against, and defeat any foreign aerial attack on the homeland. We will also guarantee our secure second strike capability. Golden Dome is a top priority for the nation and will include the development of cutting-edge domain awareness systems, kinetic and non-kinetic missile defeat capabilities, and advanced command, control, and battle management systems to integrate and augment existing U.S. missile defense capabilities. The Department of Defense remains committed to making the necessary investments in our posture to deter our adversaries and, if deterrence fails, to prevail in conflict. The Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy is working together across the department, including with my colleagues here today, to make good on these investments to defend our homeland and our forces. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, General Guillot. You're recognized.
Good afternoon, Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for holding this important hearing. Both North American Aerospace Defense Command and the United States Northern Command have critical roles in defending North America from missile attack, and we appreciate the subcommittee's continued support of our efforts. I'd also like to recognize the tremendous work being done by Lieutenant General Collins, Lieutenant General Gainey, and ASD Yaffe. As the supported commands for Homeland Missile Defense, NORAD and NORTHCOM are fortunate to have such strong and committed partners in our shared, no-fail mission. Defending North America from missile threats is increasingly challenging as global competitors rapidly develop and field advanced missile capabilities and delivery platforms, aided by increasing cooperation and technology sharing between the competitors. To counter such adversary cooperation, NORAD and NORTHCOM rely on realistic planning, targeted investments, timely deliveries, and forward-looking policies that ensure the command's ability to detect, track, and defeat potential threats in all domains. Establishing a layered domain awareness network to detect and track threats approaching North America from seabed to space remains our top priority, because you can't defeat what you can't see. That network is central to the current and future NORAD and NORTHCOM requirements, which certainly include Golden Dome for America construct. Along with improved domain awareness, we must also improve our capability and capacity to defeat missile threats. On-time delivery of the next-generation interceptor is necessary to counter North Korea's growing ICBM fleet. And innovation and investment in advanced defeat mechanisms, which could include directed energy, left of launch, and boost phase intercept, are needed to defeat cruise missiles, hypersonics, and other advanced threats. There are significant challenges ahead of us, but NORAD and NORTHCOM's capability and resolve to deter aggression and defeat threats to our nation remains unshakable. Thank you again to the subcommittee and my fellow witnesses for your continued support. I look forward to your questions. We have the watch.
Thank you, sir. General Collins.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about missile defense. And thank you for your continued support of missile defense and the broader missile defense enterprise. The Missile Defense Agency is moving quickly to provide effective defenses against a dangerous missile threat to defend the U.S. homeland, our deployed forces, and our allies and friends. The agency is transforming itself, its enterprise, and its industry base in order to develop and deliver capabilities to the warfighter at speed and scale. As we move with urgency to deliver the next generation missile defense system, we intend to leverage the performance efficiencies found in an integrated, layered missile defense. We also will continue to exploit the space domain to support a missile defense posture that is more effective, resilient, and adaptable to known and anticipated threats. MDA is laser focused on improving our U.S. homeland defenses. We are enhancing the performance and capability of the fielded ground-based mid-course defense system, along with developing and testing of the new next-gen interceptor. In support of regional defense, we are working with the Navy to improve Aegis ballistic missile defense capability and enhance hypersonic defenses, and with the Army to make investments in the future development of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD. In support of the nation's missile defense enterprise, Golden Dome for America, and reestablishing deterrence, MDA remains focused on delivering advanced, reliable, and resilient capabilities on accelerated timelines to meet the warfighter's need. I greatly appreciate your continued support of MDA and the missile defense mission, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, General Gainey.
Thank you. Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. I am honored to testify before you as the commander of U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command and Joint Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense. In these roles, I am representing an incredible organization of 2,300 soldiers and civilians spanning 13 time zones in 19 locations worldwide. The one team of professionals, along with this Army and Joint Air and Missile Defense Forces, provide credible combat capability so important to our peace through strength deterrence approach and support to 3 combat commanders. I also serve as the Senior Commander for Fort Greely, Alaska, and Senior Responsible Officer for U.S. Army Kwajalein Atoll, 2 strategic locations, remote sites that are experiencing challenges with facilities and we must continue to address with priority. Additionally, I also serve as our Army's lead enterprise integrator for air and missile defense. As the Army Air and Missile Defense Enterprise Integrator, just as I did last year, I want to highlight the strain on our AMD force. High deployment op-tempo and frequent deployment extensions not only create challenging conditions for our soldiers and their families, but place the Army's modernization plans at risk as continual extensions jeopardize critical upgrades. The deployment to time at home ratio for Army air and missile defense units is nearly 1-to-1, well below the DoD goal. Air Defense Artillery is the most deployed force in the Army. In response, the Army leadership has increased MOS recruiting flexibility through 14 uniform MOS pilot program and added critical skill bonuses, increased training opportunities, and built-in station of choice incentives, essentially improving accessions. Further addressing op-tempo challenge, the Army Integrated Air and Missile Defense is undergoing the most significant modernization in history. Fielding the Integrated Battle Command System, This will fundamentally change the way sensors and shooters are integrated across the battlefield, increasing capacity and depth to achieve an outsized effect. And finally, the Army 80A force structure will increase by 39% by FY 2030. You have already heard much about the dynamic evolving threat. It's clear we are now entering a new air and missile age. With these threats in mind, SMDC is advancing air and missile defense strategy for tomorrow while continuing to develop outsized value today. Our SMDC Center of Excellence supports the training, lethality of the schoolhouse for our space and missile defense soldiers. Our technical center is advancing cutting-edge technologies in directed energy, space, high altitude, and hypersonic testing, enabling domain dominance and non-kinetic alternatives within a comprehensive missile defeat framework. It also manages the Ronald Reagan Ballistic Missile Defense Test Site, which is critical for testing and domain awareness, ideal in location, and unmatched in precision instrumentation. JIFIC IMD conducts transregional missile defense, planning, and operational support, capability assessment, and joint education training, all aligned under U.S. Space Command. I'll focus my final point on holistic air and missile defense approach. Simply put, SMDC is already engaged. We man, train, and equip the soldiers providing protection against ICBMs right now, and we are actively managing network architecture for the air defense in place over the National Capital Region. However, we must continue to leverage technology to transform our missile defense capabilities to address the current and future threat, and SMDC has the expertise and experience to add even more value in the future. We must also invest in left-of-launch capabilities in a holistic missile defeat approach. In conclusion, I've seen firsthand how every member of our one team at SMDC contributes to the security of our homeland. Every day brings a new challenge and opportunity. From our missile defense battery in U.S. CENTCOM to our fire direction center in Alaska, our team is globally lethal, always ready, and I look forward to addressing your questions. Thank you.
Thank you all for your very sobering and important opening statements. We'll now turn to member questioning. We'll recognize each member for up to 5 minutes, and I'll start by recognizing myself. Well, I understand that the final architecture for Golden Dome remains under review. It would be helpful to hear from each of you how your organizations have contributed to the plans so far. And General Guillot, let's begin with you.
Chairman, thank you. As you mentioned, we still don't know the final configuration, but NORAD and NORTHCOM, as separate commands, provided input to both OSD and Joint Staff in terms as the supported command, what capabilities we would need from a Golden Dome approach. And what we provided, sir, were 3 separate layers. First is a domain awareness layer that detects all threats from seabed to space, to include the air and terrestrial layers in between, that are integrated to feed 2 defeat layers, the first being an ICBM defeat layer, which largely exists today with the GBIs that can defeat a North Korean threat, and then an air layer that would defeat cruise missiles and air threats. The challenge, I think, is the hypersonics, which at different parts of their flight profile could be in the ICBM phase or the air phase. And so making sure that the detect and track capability was flexible enough to handle hypersonics, and then, of course, the defeat mechanisms as well.
Okay. General Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Missile Defense Agency, as you can imagine, we have been working on a national missile defense architecture for 42 years. And so we certainly have been a big part of playing, and as the IMD Tech Authority as well, we were a key part of the team supporting what it takes to put together an integrated missile defense system. And both what we have been doing, the analysis that we've conducted over many decades, and we're at the core of helping support and inform the department in putting together an architecture that's comprehensive, that covers all pieces and parts, and could be executable.
General Gainey.
The Army I, as the Commander of Space and Missile Defense Command, has not personally been involved with the architecture build. I am more of the operational side when it comes to implementation. However, our team continues to man the GBIs and are prepared to support Northcom in any capacity moving forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Ms. Yaffe?
Thank you. Given the whole of department nature of this problem set and the expansive vision, the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Policy joined with joint staff early in the days of receiving the executive order to try to convene the core elements of the department, the experts, the stakeholders, to help frame it in terms of what the department would need to do, lay out the requirements, make sure that we understood the guidance from the White House, and start building out different options. We certainly turned it to the technical folks to dig in and build the architecture from there. But this is an all-encompassing problem, and the Office of the Secretary of Defense for Policy has helped in the early days to coordinate it. And once we have a decision on the architecture, the intention is to go to phase 2 and to lead and conduct a theater missile defense review, as that will be important, as well as just broader considerations of strategic requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. General Guillot, can you talk about how the threats were considered in this process? This isn't just building capability for the sake of capability. This is based on evolving threats to the homeland. And I think it's interesting we talked about what it was 6 years ago, what it is today, and what you expect it to be. And from your opening statements, obviously there's great concern. So can you just talk about how you went about this?
Chairman, we did use the threat as the basis for our requirements that we put forward. Certainly, starting with the ICBM threat that we see from North Korea and that we could potentially see from Iran should they decide to take their space launch vehicle and turn that into an ICBM. Then the hypersonic threat, which as I mentioned a moment ago, kind of goes through both the ICBM portion, depending on how it's launched, all the way through a terminal phase challenge for us. And then the air threat, which certainly over the last 6 years, as you mentioned, has increased as we look at both Russia and China and their doctrine, which says they will use cruise missiles to hit various points of critical infrastructure for us, and making sure that those were all tied together with a sensing grid that could feed, detect and track and feed the defeat mechanisms, and then ensure that we had the right command and control system where we could seamlessly go from one of the layers to another, with one operator to make sure we're defeating those threats.
Okay. My time has expired. I'm going to recognize the ranking member, Mr. Moulton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. General Collins, given what we have heard from industry, is it accurate that space-based interceptors would be deployed in low Earth orbit?
Sir, we have not finalized what the space-based interceptor architecture would be. We are going to open it up to industry. I fully expect that part of that would be in the LEO environment. Yes, sir.
Okay. It's hard to imagine where else there would be. General Guillot, would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, sir, I would.
Okay. Ms. Yaffe, have Russia and or China publicly or privately expressed concerns with U.S. missile defense systems posing strategic stability concerns with regards to second strike capabilities?
Sir, I think the Russians are on the record for many years expressing concerns about missile defense at the same time as they build their own capabilities.
Yeah, the Chinese have as well. So given General Collins' response regarding a space-based intercept architecture being placed in LEO, as General Guillot affirmed, would it be susceptible to effects of a nuclear detonation in that orbit?
Sir, were there to be a nuclear detonation in LEO, then perhaps it would be. Obviously, all the folks involved in the architecture discussions are tracking the threats.
Yeah, so
carefully.
with what we know about Russia's efforts to develop and deploy a nuclear weapon in space and their fear of U.S. missile defenses, has there been an assessment done on the likelihood or increased chance that Russia would employ such a weapon in conflict early on to take out our space-based intercept layer?
Sir, it sounds like an intelligence assessment, and I would defer that to the intelligence community.
No. It's an operational question. You're going to spend billions of dollars of taxpayer money building things that could inspire the Russians to say, oh, we need to take them out before they get used. You better figure that out if you're going to spend a lot of taxpayer money on this.
Sir, I understand the question. I think we have seen that Russia is pursuing these capabilities in any case, given the threats that they see broadly. However, they also continue to counter these threats with their own missiles. Which
Well, I'll tell you what, you better figure out if you're going to build this whole thing at the cost of tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money, and then the Russians just plan to take it out with their space-based nuke. That's not going to work too well for anybody, because of course it's going to take out all the rest of our satellites as well. Ms. Yaffe, you also used a word today that I've not heard before when describing Golden Dome, aerial. Is it indeed the president's vision to only defend against aerial threats like the Iron Dome system where he got this idea? So in other words, all China needs to do is develop the kinds of sea-based delivery systems Russia started developing after we pulled out of the ABM treaty just to get around Golden Dome?
No, sir. The executive order calls for the defense of the United States against ballistic, hypersonic, advanced cruise missiles, and other next-generation aerial attacks. The earlier part of the
Aerial attacks.
Correct. Other next.
So not sea-based.
I mean, a sea-based ballistic missile would be part of this.
As we all know, there's other ways that you can run a boat up into Los Angeles Harbor, right? It's clear that Golden Dome is not designed to defend against that. Is that your understanding as well, General Guillot? Since aerial is in the executive order?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Seems like another big hole we should investigate before we spend a lot of money on this. General Guillot, given your responsibilities as the commander of Northern Command, do you believe that the strategic landscape has significantly changed in the past 6 years, such that the second Trump administration would dramatically change its strategic defense policy from the first Trump administration?
Congressman, I do think that the landscape has changed significantly with the number of countries that are either possessing or pursuing ICBMs, the hypersonics.
Are you talking about China? Because we knew 6 years ago that China was doing this.
No, I'm talking about Iran's pursuit and Pakistan's pursuit.
Okay, well, Iran and Pakistan have been pursuing those things for a long time.
Well, yes, sir, but they're certainly more advanced now than they were 6 years ago.
Well, apparently we're going to get rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities with a deal, so I guess they're going to be off the table. Of course, we've had ways of dealing with Pakistan for a while. General Gainey, what's our pacing threat right now according to the National Defense Strategy?
The North Korean threat.
Actually, it's the Chinese threat.
Yes, sir.
So given that we are conducting a shift to the Pacific, how does moving THAADs and Patriot batteries out of the Pacific into the Middle East help support our national defense strategy?
Any movement of any of our Patriot or THAAD systems are take under careful consideration, and we also have additional assets at home station prepared to deploy and fill those voids if necessary. But every deployment is carefully considered as part of our gift map.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognize the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, all four of you, for being here. I was fortunate to do missile defense in Israel in 2009 and 10. We worked with the Aero missile team, put in a radar satellite sport, and I would never thought that we could shoot down 99% of 110 ballistic missiles, and then later 180 ballistic missiles at a 99% PK. So thank God for missile defenses. Israel has seen the impact of a system that works, and granted, we got a different problem set, we're a lot bigger, but I think our country will be well served to have a strong missile defense as well. My first question is to General Guillot. I'm a little worried about some of the cuts in our National Guard. Your predecessor had some concerns too about having enough aircraft to do the alerts. How does the air portion of this mission fit in with Golden Dome? I mean, is it, you would think it'd be more radars and interceptors, but I think aircraft play a role too.
Congressman, I think you're exactly right. As we envision the entire network, it would include space-based AMTI, Airborne Moving Target Indicator, which would detect and track aircraft and cruise missiles, a land-based capability such as over-the-horizon radar, and certainly fighter aircraft with capable interceptors, missiles to defeat cruise missiles, which, in addition to the ranking member's question and I answered on ICBMs, I think cruise missiles is probably the biggest advancement that we've seen over the past 6 years, and that needs to be a part of this integrated system.
Do you get a voice when the services are looking at reductions? Because your predecessor had expressed concern on the reductions with the Air National Guard, and they're the ones who are providing the alert capabilities. Do you feel well enough coordinated with, or And is your comfort zone good right now with what we have?
Yes, sir, to both. I do get a voice, and I am very comfortable with the Air National Guard's presentation for our alert force.
Okay, thank you. General Collins, yesterday we voted on a $150 billion plus up to our defense spending. We want to get us to about 4% GDP spending, which is the norm. Right now we're at 2.9%. It's inadequate for all the systems we want to field, plus taking care of our troops. So I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do this next year to right-size our defense spending. I think we're going to be spending $5.6 billion on missile defense with this, the money that we apportioned. What do you think is the first steps for you, and what do you need to field for like space interceptors and things like that? What's your first priority with this influx of money?
Thank you for that, Congressman. We certainly do see the opportunity of a reconciliation to begin quickly and bring much-needed resources into the missile defense enterprise. It really is probably not just one thing. I think there's really, I think, two lanes to look at when we look at the missile defense enterprise. And number one is making sure we have the capability capacity with the kit we have today to improve the defense posture today or as quickly as we can. We can make a difference today with systems that we have. And then the second piece would be really looking at the disruptive technology piece and pushing on that development piece and getting into an agile prototyping construct as quickly as possible, whether that be directed energy, non-kinetics, or space-based interceptors. And I think we'd look to do a very heavy cyclical prototyping phase to get after that and mature that capability as quickly as possible.
It would seem to me you would have to have a really good sensor system first before you can intercept. And I know something we've talked about before. Obviously, ballistic missiles from the sea, from the continent, but the hypersonics are very hard to track. And so I would see a real need there to really work on the sensor problem first.
Yes, sir. Much of the kit that we have today, we certainly have proven sensored architectures to track ballistic missiles today, ground-based. And we are 1 year into our prototyping experiment with the HBTSS, the Hypersonic Ballistic Tracking Space Sensor, which has been going very well and showing very positive performance against a hypersonic threat. And so as part of that, we would look to then expand that. The Space Force and the Space Development Agency already had a plan to integrate HBTSS into the proliferated warfighting space architecture. We would look with additional resources to accelerate that as much as possible to bring that capability to bear.
Thank you so much. And even if we have a differing of opinions on the actual missile defense, it seems like the sensor stuff is something we could all agree to and we need. With that, I yield.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your service and for being here today. General Gainey, I was struck by your comments about the challenges on the deployed folks. And I recently got back from the Middle East from a trip. We went to Iraq and various Gulf nations and met with troops who are working on some of these missile defense things over there. They're doing heroic work. What could Congress do to help this challenge for these deployed folks? You referred to one program in your testimony, but I just want to give you the chance to elaborate a little bit further on this issue.
Yes, sir. Thanks for asking that question. The Air Missile Defense Force is a very resilient force, and we've asked a lot of our force, and they continue to respond, as you saw in the Middle East. Where Congress can support is continue to support the funding of our AM missile defense modernization. Our modernization is going to allow us to not completely rely on our Patriot system as the system of choice, but also field out our integrated battle command system, which will integrate our counter cruise missile capability into our common C2 construct. And so therefore, the Patriot system is not the only system that we'll have to rely on for the range of threats. And will give us the portfolio to have the appropriate shooter for the appropriate threat set.
Okay, thanks. So actually, building on that, one of the things that we heard throughout the Middle East was that everybody is just super eager to get more of our missile defense equipment, and they're frustrated, honestly, by how long it takes for our American industrial base to produce that stuff. This is a question for maybe General Collins, or I don't know, General Guillot, you may have comments as well. What's going on? How could we improve that? We're talking about folks taking 10 years to get systems that they've, ordered, or, 5 to 10 years. What's the underlying challenges? How could Congress help? What does American industry need to do better in that production side?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. It is certainly a challenge that we continue to face with especially new developments, developments of capability that starts from scratch that does not exist. And some of those do take a considerable amount of time. There are certainly activities to focus on more mature technologies as you start the program, to focus on more open systems and modular systems so that the first solution may not be the perfect solution. It's capability to bring to bear and then evolve it and grow it over time. What I'd call more of an agile approach to bringing capability to bear. I think that's really important. I think some of the delays in like the interceptor production lines and the munitions production lines, I think there's improvements we could make to stabilize the funding and the demand signal on the munition line. I bought munitions for the Air Force. I buy munitions now. And the yank up and yank back, invest to expand lines, then don't fund production on those lines. I think a stabilization of that could actually help us to increase the cadence and the availability of the needed weapons that we require going forward. I think that's probably a very key item where we could look at, and potentially even how we procure munitions. We procure munitions with a lot of the same rule sets that we do as from larger weapon systems. There may be a more agile way to get after how we buy the parts and set up the production lines to support more agile weapons development and delivery.
Thanks so much. Ms. Yaffe, last question. I got about a minute here. I'm the new guy here, so what I don't really get is, we were doing missile defense before, and now we have this Golden Dome thing. What were we not working on before that we now are working on? Or is Golden Dome sort of like a rebranding of what we had before under a new executive order? Like, is there some requirement that we didn't do before that we now have? And we have about 45 seconds.
Sir, thank you for the question. The basic answer is that until now, missile defense has been focused on rogue state ICBM threats, so truly North Korea. The direction in the Golden Dome executive order is to focus on the whole range of missile threats, the ballistic, hypersonic, cruise missile, advanced aerial threats from all nations, and that's the significant shift in both policy and direction.
So we were doing that before, but you're talking about like maybe numbers, like we're now going to be able to intercept hundreds or thousands of things that are heading towards us or something?
Sir, I can't comment on what the architecture will be and what it will be, the kinds of numbers it will be set up against, but ultimately the Homeland Missile Defense was focused on leveraging the GBI interceptors for the North Korea threat, which was, of course, much smaller in number.
Thanks. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Messmer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. General Collins, thank you for our conversation earlier today. Your predecessor testified that the glide phase interceptor program schedule, which is anticipated in 2032 roughly, in his words, didn't meet the threat. Is MDA developing options to accelerate the program?
Congressman, thank you, and thank you for your time this morning. Hypersonic missile defense is a key area that does need additional focus. The glide phase interceptor program was, due to priorities and resourcing decisions last year, we were driven to make an earlier selection and a down select years earlier than planned. That has actually delayed the program in the funding line and profile that we have in the budget that you all received last year. We'll actually push that delivery to 2035. We are pursuing and evaluating acceleration options. It is primarily a resourcing at this point. There are some technology things that need to happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but then there is a resourcing and alignment issue that could accelerate that. We believe we could recover to 2032 with no increased level of programmatic risk across the program. But that's about the fastest we could do today. We are looking and exploring other alternatives and options to potentially bring residual capability or partial capability from other weapon systems we have. But as it stands today, the only hypersonic maneuvering target defense capability we have is in the fleet with the SM-6 and the sea-based terminal capability.
Okay, thank you. What's the status of the next generation interceptors?
Yes, sir. The next-gen interceptor, as briefed last year as well, due to a funding decision and priorities, we did down select to a single contractor last year, a year and a half earlier than expected. So that program still continues on and is our largest and highest priority program for Homeland Defense. We have made significant progress at the system level. The NGI is the booster, the interceptor, but the broader weapon system is also now fully aligned and synchronized with the NGI program, which is a major feat for the enterprise. Last year, I briefed at our number one issue and risk going forward with either of the vendors at that time was the solid rocket motor effort and development. This is a new booster, a new development, and we have experienced delays and issues with that development and are expecting 18-month or more delay into the delivery of that initial capability. We've taken actions to shore up that development as well as bring in an additional source to help buy down the schedule risk of the development as we move forward. It still is the foundation for the future of ballistic ICBM protection of the homeland, and we are 100% committed and focused on that program.
Okay, thank you. What do you see in the space-based interceptor's role in a layered defense to ballistic and hypersonic threats?
Thanks, Congressman. We're certainly taking a close look. The executive order has opened that up for us to take a closer look and move forward on developing that. We will work through the technology piece to better understand and move that as quickly as possible. If anything that we've learned over the last year, 2 years in Israel, Eastern Med, in Ukraine, is that a layered missile defense approach and design is paramount to the large rate sizes that we expect, that we've seen last year, and that we would expect in the future. And adding another layer, a space-based intercept layer to that, would certainly looks to increase the performance of the overall architecture.
Okay. Thank you. As a follow-up to that, with General Guillot, you've previously stated support for a layered missile defense approach with a space component. Could you go into more detail on how that would fit in Northcom's perspective from a defense standpoint?
Congressman, having a layered approach from the NORAD and Northcom perspective is essential to make sure that we can identify, track, and guide on all threats.
Okay, thank you. General Collins, as you know, Iron Beam is an Israeli-developed directed energy defense system designed to defend against short-range rockets, drones, artillery, and mortar bombs. Can you discuss where things stand with our Iron Beam procurement and any funds set aside for this?
Yes, Congressman. On the U.S. side, there are no funds at this point set aside for Iron Beam. As part of the Israeli supplemental from last year, there is a portion of that we are working with our Israeli Missile Defense Organization partners to execute and bring that money to them to continue the development and fielding of Iron Beam. One thing that we have negotiated in that agreement, though, was 50% of that investment is a payback into the U.S. economy. So while it goes to Israel, they have to have half of the contracts, half of the money comes back into building our industry base. And so that supplemental actually will serve to increase the industry base, skill set, and capability for that will pay back into our directed energy efforts as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses being here today. We hear a lot about Golden Dome, but there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of clarity on what the point is. You know, it reminds me of that commercial, that Wendy's commercial, where's the beef? And so it seems that, you know, a concept has been thought of, which has been thought of before in the past, and it seems that we're going about it in a way, backwards way, to fill this system eventually. General Guillot, Collins, and Gainey, how is the concept of Golden Dome different than our current missile defense architecture? And did any plans exist to develop space-based capabilities for both missile tracking and missile interception prior to January 2025?
Congressman, I think the big difference that you'll see is Golden Dome takes all of the existing requirements that we had, but for the first time, integrates multiple layers into one system that allows us to detect, track, and defeat multiple types of threats that affect us in different domains with one system. So while a lot of the components and the requirements were there in the past, this is the first time that it's all tied together in one system. And yes, there were certainly space-based ability to detect and track prior to this.
Congressman, to build on General Guillot's response, the architecture plan that a Missile Defense Agency had before January of 2025 included a space layer for hypersonics and ballistic missile tracking and discrimination as we move forward, and most of the other components and pieces, parts of what the executive order included were part of the architecture plan that we were going to get after. I think maybe the biggest impact of this activity is it will accelerate many of those options. Quicker resources, the schedule is pretty long to get to some of these activities. The space-based interceptor piece was not in the architecture plan as we were before January 25.
Great. And Congressman, the only point I will add that wasn't covered by General Guillot and General Collins is the executive order also called out left of launch missile defeat. I think that's an important aspect of missile defense that has been neglected to date, and focusing capabilities and efforts towards the attriting of a missile force prior to launch is an important aspect of the holistic missile defeat program. Thank you.
Thank you. General Collins, can you give us an update on the hypersonic and ballistic space sensor HBTSSS program and what we have learned from the prototype demonstrations? What is the current plan to develop an operational constellation beyond the prototype stage? And how do adversaries' growing counter space capabilities influence MDA's view of the appropriate mix of space-based and ground-based sensors in missile defense?
Thank you, Congressman. So first off, HBTSS, it was launched in February last year on Valentine's Day. We quickly had our first hypersonic testbed test in June, and then we had one later in the year. And both of those were very successful. The three main objectives of the HBTSS prototyping were to show that we could have the appropriate sensitivity in orbit to see a hypersonic vehicle throughout its entire flight, to be able to have the quality of service, the accuracy of a track, to be able to close the fire control loop, and for that data to come down and enter the command and control system fast enough, so latency. And we have had 2 hypersonic testbed flights, as well coincident with another flight test that we did just a month and a half ago, taking a look at SM-6. We also had HBTSS in view, and it tracked that new hypersonic target that was used in that test very well. And so we have proved out the capability to get after the accuracy, get after the latency. We are tweaking the algorithms to improve our quality of service, but we see it as a very successful demonstration of that capability. We have been partnered with the Space Development Agency all along. They have been tracking and part of our HBTSS development, and they have our requirements and plan to integrate that capability, that level of requirement and tech into the proliferated warfighter space architecture and build that up over the coming tranches to give us eventually a global capability to track hypersonic weapons. Your last question, sir, was?
I'm out of time. If you could
Gentleman's
answer
time
that
has
for the
expired.
record, that would be great afterwards.
Will do, Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes the distinguished gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
And thank you very much, Dr. Chairman Desjardins. And we appreciate all of your service, and what an important time in history, what a great opportunity I believe we have in history to protect the American people. And we thank you all for being here today. And sadly to me, we're in a conflict we didn't choose, and that is dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. It began February 24, 2023, the invasion by war criminal Putin of Ukraine, October 7, the invasion I consider of Israel by Iran, its puppets, and so we've just got to be prepared. And we know that earlier this month, that Russia launched over 70 missiles into the capital of Kyiv against civilian targets that had catastrophic effect on 35 people killed on a bus over and over again, just war crimes that should never occur. And then Tehran has directly fired missiles itself, directly from Iran and with its puppets against civilian targets in Israel. And then we have the Chinese Communist Party continuing to expand their arsenal of medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles, posing a significant threat to the United States and our allies across the Pacific. And it's my view that we must be prepared to strengthen our capabilities to deter the adversaries so that we can establish peace through strength. And General Gainey, as we modernize to deter and defend ourselves against the adversaries with increasingly deadly capabilities, we are moving towards setting up a revolutionary new missile defense system, the Golden Dome, which has been so advocated and appreciated by President Donald Trump. With that in mind, General Gainey, as the service representative on the panel with the, quote, organize, train, and equip responsibilities, are you providing input on the personnel and training requirements that would be associated with the options under the consideration for Golden Dome?
Congressman, thank you for that question. I have not been part of the architecture work to date, so therefore I have not had any input on the organizational training aspect of it, but what I can say is I have significant input into the Army's organization, modernization, and way forward, and any elements of the Army that may be part of that architecture will have already been vetted. And as the potential operational component for NORTHCOM doing the ground-based mid-course defense system, as we ingest additional technology into the architecture, my team will be prepared to advise NORTHCOM and assist as necessary.
Well, we certainly have faith in you and your colleagues. With that in mind, too, General Gainey, as war criminal Putin's unprovoked invasion, which is to actually reestablish the failed Soviet Union, we see the axis of evil of the Chinese Communist Party, war criminal Putin, DPRK, North Korea, and the regime in Tehran continue to build up their missile capabilities, with a threat against the United States and our allies continuing to grow. And General, what is the Army's position on foreign military sales for the lower tier air and missile defense sensor? Does the Army support partner nations purchasing the system as a standalone item?
Again, Congressman, thanks for your question. The LTAMS radar is an exportable system currently, and it's currently part of our foreign military sales system. And Poland has purchased the system already, and yes, it is available as a standalone option. However, we continue to encourage it to be purchased as part of the integrated battle command system, because that promotes the interoperability between our allies and the U.S. as we move forward.
And that's exciting. It's so exciting to see Poland come to life and be free. Secretary Yaffe, I'm very concerned about the weaponization of space by war criminal Putin and the Chinese Communist Party, and with the potentiality of overriding or evading the ground and sea-based missile defense systems. How can this be addressed of a potential of the weaponization of space?
Sir, thank you for the question. I think we're tracking China and Russia's developments in space very closely. They've both put up a number of capabilities of concern designed to hold our critical space-based assets at risk, and that's part of the discussion. At the same time, we hope to leverage space to enable our sensors to be most effective in the future Golden Dome system.
Well, thank you again for your service. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clear up a couple things here. This is the Missile Defense and Missile Defeat Programmatic Updates hearing. So we're here to talk about these, right? I took the liberty of having my crack graphics team draw up some of these. So we're here to talk about this stuff, right? So if this happens and we don't stop it, this is going to happen, right? Mushroom cloud, no more America. So we're not here to talk about these, correct? Okay, I'm a retired Navy SEAL Senior Chief. We know how to take care of boats. All right. General Guillot, just want to clear that up. When was the Iron Dome first developed?
Congressman, I'm not exactly sure, but it's been a couple of decades.
Okay. Has it been improving, would you say?
The Iron Dome, the
Yeah.
Israeli system?
Yeah.
Yes, it has been improved.
Okay. So they started without a missile defense system. Then they had an idea, and then they started building on it, and then they got to IOC, and now they're continuing to improve it. So could we logically say, like, we could extend our thoughts, just like do a thought experiment here, like an Einstein thought experiment? Could we say that we, as the United States of America, has been intimately involved in the development of the Iron Dome system, could we say that maybe we could apply that here in the United States and that it will work?
Sir, we have been involved with the development of the Iron Dome. I think General Collins could attest to that. Well, first, I want to confirm your...
Yes, sir. So we have been partnered with Israel Missile Defense for 2 decades, and we actually were not part of the development of Iron Dome. We helped co-produce that, but we have their upper tiers, David Sling and Arrow.
Yep.
We have co-developed with them, and so we've helped partner design their architecture and are intimately integrated. Our system and their system are integrated together to work. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we could say that there's a functioning, a pretty darn, General Bacon pointed out, 99% of these things. That's functioning in Israel right now. We have a larger industrial base than Israel. We have a greater GDP than Israel, and we have a larger population than Israel. So can we say that if we applied the same type of thought process to the development of Iron Dome, and we put it here in the United States and we called it like Golden Dome or something, could we reasonably assume that that will function at some point in the future to protect the United States of America against these threats?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Now, listen, I am not of the mind that we should be shaping our defense policy on whether or not it's going to provoke Russia. I think that is a straw man argument, and I think that it is a politically derived argument that potentially puts the United States of America in jeopardy. So what we need to do is make sure that we robustly, and I trust you guys to do this. How long have you been doing this job, General Guillot?
I've been the commander since...
No, I mean like the Air Force.
36 years, sir.
36 years. General Collins, how long have you been doing this?
32.
General Gainey?
34.
Ma'am, they've all been doing the job longer than you've been alive. Just saying. How long have you been in the defense position like this?
In this position for a few months. I've been in the OSD for 15 years.
Okay, so we got, 100 and some years of whatever experience of like dealing with defense policy and anti-missile machinery, equipment, policy, deployment, right? Okay, that means that you guys are a table full of subject matter experts. And because we sit behind this dais with a microphone doesn't make us experts in these types of fields. And so I would just want to make sure that we are leaning heavily on the experts and understand that you've done this before. We're using integrated anti-missile defense systems in Israel and that they can work. And this is the last thing before my time expires. I represent Volk Field and also Fort McCoy. I'm giving you an open invitation to, when this Golden Dome gets done, I'd like a battery of whatever it's going to look like at Volk Field or Fort McCoy in the state of Wisconsin to help protect the upper Midwest. That is an open invitation. If you guys haven't been there, I want to invite you. I'll give you some cheese curds, but I want your soldiers and airmen and Space Force people or whatever, their guardians, at some point in my district to help protect the United States of America. So thank you very much, and with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses. You know, and it's interesting, as I'm listening to this discussion, I had a colleague came to me not long ago after I was talking about Golden Dome and my support for it. And that colleague said to me, essentially, you know, that's a pipe dream. It's just never going to work. And I got to thinking about it because I have maybe a bit of a unique perspective. I worked as a staff member on Capitol Hill 30 years ago. I look across these pictures and Les Aspin was chairman, Ron Dellums, Mr. Spence. And I remember Mr. Dellums specifically was an outspoken opponent of ballistic missile defense. This was in the 1990s, and we had arguments on the House floor about how this would never work. Missile defense would never work. Argued against the THAAD program. It'll never work, they said. And, you know, today, as I was talking to that colleague, I'd ask, well, maybe we should ask the Israelis if it would work. I mean, and I guess I would ask you this. We have these arguments about whether if this is a technical problem or whether this is a problem of political will. And America does great things, but every great thing we've ever done has been difficult. There were people at the time who said we couldn't land a man on the moon, and we did it, but there were naysayers back then who said we can't do this. I would ask General Guillot, your thoughts. Is this a technical issue or is it a political will issue? Can we do this technically?
Yes, Congressman. There are certainly technical challenges with the integration of all these capabilities into one, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, General Collins, your thoughts?
Sir, we've demonstrated over the last 2 years that these systems can work, the ground-based systems that we have today. We have some understanding to do, to General Guillot's point, the technical integration to bring a space-based interceptor to work, the understanding of what a life cycle cost of maintaining a constellation and what that brings to the fight. All those things need to be worked through as we move forward. But we certainly believe in layered missile defense, and we've shown throughout the last 2 years that those systems work and bring capability, and they save lives.
Yeah, General Gainey.
Thank you, Congressman. Yeah, I agree. And in a previous job where I worked counter unmanned aerial system technology, pushing the envelope on technology, whether it's directed energy, non-kinetics, it's amazing what industry can come up with. Yes, there's challenging, but there's always opportunities.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's some people on Capitol Hill who are just so invested in mutually assured destruction that we can't shift our paradigm a little bit. And we better hope, if that's what we're going to rely on, is mutually assured destruction, is that our adversaries don't figure out a way to have ballistic missile defense, that they don't figure out a golden dome, because then mutually assured destruction will be a thing of the past and we'll be left in the dust on that. So I think that's very important. With the remaining time I have, General Collins, MDA has been a strong advocate for the importance of space-based sensors that collect fire control quality data. Can you talk about why that level of fidelity is so important to missile defense operations?
Yes, thanks for that, Congressman. Certainly, we do see a future. As I mentioned, our architecture did include a number of different sensing capabilities in space, one being the HPTSS to look down and pick up the maneuvering targets and hold them under custody through the entire time of flight. Closing the fire control loop is what we call it, fire control, the kill chain for missile defense. To get our interceptor to work, we need to get it into the right location and looking in the right space to find the missile when it comes time to intercept. And without the appropriate level of sensitivity, track quality, and timeliness, we do not get that information to the interceptor in time, and therefore we cannot consummate the intercept and we will miss. And so that's going to be very important, whether that's a hypersonic interceptor, whether that is a ballistic missile that we intercept in boost phase, mid-course phase, or terminal phase. We need to get that cue really tied in and to the interceptor, to the command and control system and into the interceptor as quickly as possible to be able to close that chain and actually do the intercept.
Yeah, thank you, General. I appreciate that. I would just say, Mr. Chairman, I mean, these are hard discussions, but we sit in this committee room and we hear about the threat from China day in and day out. We hear about the threat from Russia day in and day out. And then we sit up here from this dais or out on the House floor and we make excuses about why we can't fund these things. I'd yield back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman, and I would like to thank all of our witnesses on behalf of Ranking Member Moulton and all the committee members for your thoughtful testimony. That'll conclude the open portion of this hearing. We will now move into the closed session upstairs.